I'm Cassandra Miller, ex-wife, single mom, the woman who signed the divorce papers and gave birth to his child 3 months later. I once loved him when he was perfect. Pressed suits, polished career, 5-year plans, but I fell in love with him again when he stood in the rain, covered in mud and baby spit up, crying because he missed our son's first steps. And that was the day I realized. Some families aren't built through marriage, but through choosing each other again and again, even after everything breaks. Before I share the full story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to fight for your family through the storm. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. The weight of Theo against my chest was the only thing keeping me upright as I pushed through the glass doors of the National Organ Donation Center. 4 months old, he was heavier than I remembered from this morning. Or maybe it was just my arms shaking. Julian stood at the podium, gesturing to a PowerPoint slide about donor success rates. His voice carried the same confident cadence that once made me fall in love with him during his residency presentations. Now it just made my stomach turn. I waited until he paused for applause. Then I stepped forward. "Julian?" The room went silent. Cameras swiveled toward me like predators catching a scent. Julian's face drained of color, his hand frozen mid-gesture. "We need to talk." I shifted Theo higher on my hip. "He's yours." The flashbulbs exploded. Someone shouted questions. Julian's assistant, Margaret, the same woman who'd blocked my calls during the divorce, rushed forward with security. But Julian raised his hand, stopping them. I moved closer, close enough that only he could hear me over the chaos. "I wasn't going to tell you. God knows I tried not to. But last week, I watched him struggle to breathe through an oxygen tube in the NICU, and I realized you needed to know." His eyes dropped to Theo's face. Those same green eyes, that stubborn chin, the recognition hit him like a physical blow. What I didn't say, what I'd discovered only 2 weeks ago while sorting through old medical files, was that Julian had undergone fertility treatments with donor sperm after believing he was sterile. All those arguments about my obsession with having children, and he'd been trying too, just secretly. The cosmic joke? Theo was his biological son. The fertility issues had been mine all along, until somehow, miraculously, they weren't. Julian grabbed my elbow and steered me toward the exit, his fingers trembling against my jacket. We ended up in the small park across the street, sitting on a bench while Theo dozed in my arms. "How?" His voice cracked. "The divorce was finalized 5 months ago. That means..." I found out 2 weeks before the papers were signed. I watched a jogger pass, avoiding his eyes. "During that last fight, remember? You were in Boston for the healthcare summit. I was throwing up every morning, thinking it was stress. He was quiet for so long I thought he might walk away. Then, why didn't you tell me?" The laugh that escaped me was bitter. "I tried, Julian. Called your office 17 times. Margaret said you were too busy. Your sister told me to respect your boundaries. Even my own lawyer said contacting you could jeopardize the settlement. But I would have..." "Would have what?" I turned to face him fully. "Stopped the divorce? Pretended we weren't broken? You had already accepted the federal position. You were already gone, Julian. You just hadn't moved out yet." I pulled the DNA test from my diaper bag, the paper soft from being folded and unfolded so many times. "I had it done last month. When he got sick, I needed to know medical history." I handed it to him. 99.9%. Julian's hands shook as he read. When Theo stirred, making small fussy sounds, Julian reached out instinctively, then pulled back. "You can hold him," I said quietly. The moment Theo settled into Julian's arms, something broke in his face. Tears ran down his cheeks as he touched Theo's tiny fingers, counted them like every new parent does. "I thought we ended because you gave up on us," he whispered. "But I see now. I was the one who left first. I just did it while still living in the same house." What he didn't know yet was how I'd survived those first months, sleeping on my friend Mila's couch, working double shifts as a temporary nurse while hiding morning sickness, nearly losing Theo at 20 weeks when the stress became too much, or how I'd learned, through a mutual friend, that he'd been offered the federal position 3 months before our separation. 3 months of pretending our future was in Philadelphia while knowing he was leaving. That night, Julian showed up at my studio apartment with Chinese food and 1,000 questions. I let him in because Theo needed to know his father, even if I couldn't trust him with my heart again. "Tell me everything," he said, spreading containers across my tiny kitchen counter. "From the beginning." So I did. The positive test in a gas station bathroom, the first ultrasound alone, the night I hemorrhaged at 16 weeks and drove myself to the ER because I had no one to call. Jesus, Cassie. He pushed his food away. You could have died. But I didn't. I was mechanically eating lo mein, needing the calories for nursing. Mila found me the next morning and moved me in with her. She's the reason we made it. Julian was quiet then. My mother knew, didn't she? I nodded. She saw me at the pharmacy buying prenatal vitamins, told me not to trap you with a baby. He stood abruptly, pacing my small living room. "I need to tell you something about the IVF." My chopsticks froze midway to my mouth. "I did it 6 months before we separated. My mother paid for it, said it was a gift. I thought if I could fix my infertility without you knowing, it would take pressure off you, off us." He laughed bitterly. $15,000 to find out I wasn't actually sterile. The doctor said stress can affect sperm count. Imagine that. The room spun slightly. All those fights about money, about my desperation for a baby, and he'd spent thousands in secret. "There's more," I said quietly. "This wasn't my first pregnancy with you." Julian stopped pacing. 3 years ago. You were at that conference in Seattle, the one that got extended twice. I was 8 weeks along when I started bleeding. By the time you came home, it was over. I never told you because you seemed so relieved when I said I wasn't pregnant that month. The silence stretched between us like a year. Finally, Julian sat beside me on the couch, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn to our wedding. "We were spectacular at failing each other," he said. "Yeah," I agreed. "We really were." 3 days later, I woke up on the bathroom floor. The last thing I remembered was getting up to prepare Theo's 3 a.m. bottle. Now sunlight streamed through the window, and Theo was screaming. I tried to stand but couldn't. My phone was in the bedroom. I crawled inch by inch while my baby's cries grew hoarse. Somehow I managed to call Julian. Not 911, not Mila. Julian. "Something's wrong," I whispered when he answered. "I can't. Theo." I don't remember him arriving. The next clear memory was the hospital ceiling, Julian's face hovering above me, Theo crying somewhere nearby. "Postpartum infection," the doctor explained. "Untreated endometritis. You're lucky your friend brought you in when he did." Lucky. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I watched Julian through the glass door, walking the hallway with Theo. He'd found the diaper bag, the formula. His shirt had spit up on the shoulder. He was bouncing Theo the wrong way, too fast, too jerky, but Theo had stopped crying. The infection was worse than they initially thought. When they wheeled me toward surgery, Julian grabbed my hand. "You're going to be fine," he said, but his voice shook. "If I'm not..." "Stop. Julian, listen, if something happens, Theo needs to know that I loved him, that I wanted him more than anything. Promise me." He squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. "Nothing's happening to you. I won't let it." As they pushed me through the doors, I heard him on the phone with his mother. "I don't care what you think about her. She's the mother of my child, and she's dying because she's been doing this alone, because we all failed her. So either help or stay away, but I'm done with your poison." Later, Mila told me he didn't leave the hospital for 3 days. He slept in the chair beside my bed, Theo in the bassinet between us. He learned to change diapers from YouTube videos in the hallway. He sang off-key lullabies at 2 a.m. when Theo wouldn't settle. When I finally woke up properly, he was asleep in the chair, Theo on his chest, both of them snoring softly. His hand was stretched toward my bed, fingers just touching the blanket, like he'd been trying to hold my hand when exhaustion won. I was released after a week but stable. Julian had taken indefinite leave from his job, something I'd begged him to do during our marriage, but he'd always refused. "I'm staying," he announced, setting up a pack and play in my studio. "Just until you're stronger." I was too tired to argue. Plus, Theo needed him. That was what I told myself as Julian took the night feeds, letting me sleep through for the first time in months. We developed a rhythm. Not romantic, not even friendly, really. Just functional. He handled mornings while I showered. I handled evenings while he worked remotely. We passed Theo between us like a carefully negotiated treaty. "You're different," I told him one evening, watching him test formula temperature on his wrist, something he'd learned from the NICU nurses. "Losing you was bad enough," he said simply. "Almost losing you again, and him. It changes your priorities." Mila stopped by that weekend with groceries and gossip. While Julian was giving Theo a bath, she pulled me aside. "He came to the hospital, during your pregnancy, month 5, when you were on bed rest." My heart stopped. "What?" "Administration turned him away. Said you'd filed a no-contact order. You didn't, did you?" I shook my head slowly. "Margaret, his assistant, she had access to his email, his calendar. She was also sleeping with him, according to hospital rumor. No, I knew Julian's faults, but cheating wasn't one of them. She wanted to, maybe, but Julian would never. I know, that's probably why she kept you apart. Couldn't have the ex-wife coming back with a baby." That night, I watched Julian reading Theo a medical journal like it was a bedtime story, complete with voices for different researchers. This man, who'd once missed our anniversary for a conference, had memorized Theo's feeding schedule down to the minute. "I heard about the hospital," I said quietly, "when you tried to visit." He looked up, surprised. "How did Mila?" I nodded. "I went 3 times, he admitted. Wrote letters too. Margaret said she'd forward them." He laughed bitterly. "Found out last week she'd been deleting them, among other things. She's under investigation now." "Why didn't you try harder?" The question I'd been afraid to ask. "Because I thought you'd made your choice. And after everything, I wanted to respect it, even if it killed me." He paused. "Did it kill you when I didn't come?" "Every day," I whispered. I couldn't sleep that night. Around 2 a.m., I heard Julian's voice from the living room, soft and broken. I crept to the doorway. He was holding Theo by the window, city lights painting them both in gold. "I lost your mom once because I was too proud to admit I was scared," he whispered to our son. "Scared of failing, of not being enough, of turning into my father. And I almost lost you because I was too blind to see what was right in front of me." Theo made a small sound, fingers grasping at Julian's shirt. "But here's my promise, little man. Whether your mom takes me back or not, I'm not going anywhere. You deserve both of us, even if we're not together. I'll be at every doctor's appointment, every milestone, every nightmare. You'll never wonder if your dad loves you." I must have made a sound because he turned, caught me crying in the doorway. "Cassie, I heard you," I managed. He shifted Theo to one arm, reached for me with the other. I let him pull me close, the 3 of us standing there in the dark apartment that suddenly felt less empty. "I can't love you again," I said against his shoulder. "Not the way I did before. That person, that trust, it's gone." "I know. But maybe we could be something new. Not lovers, not even friends yet. Just Theo's parents, together but separate. Like roommates who had a baby. Despite everything," I laughed. "Something like that." We started looking for a house the next week. Nothing fancy. Julian had savings and my work insurance had finally kicked in. We found a 2-bedroom in Fishtown with a tiny yard and good schools nearby. "Separate bedrooms," I insisted. "Of course." And we split everything: chores, bills, childcare. "Agreed. And you can date," I added, testing the words. "If you want." He looked at me for a long moment. "The only person I want is currently setting very reasonable boundaries that I'm going to respect. So no, I won't be dating." We moved in on a Thursday. That night, in our separate rooms with Theo's nursery between us, I heard Julian unpacking. The familiar sound of his movements, his occasional muttering at stubborn boxes, made something in my chest unclench for the first time in months. We weren't fixed. We might never be. But we were trying, and that was enough. 6 months passed. Julian kept his promise. Every feeding, every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night. He enrolled in parenting classes, joined a dad's group, read every book on child development he could find. I went back to school for my RN degree. Julian watched Theo during my evening classes, sending me photos of their adventures. Theo covered in sweet potato. Theo laughing at Julian's attempts at peekaboo. Theo asleep on Julian's chest during a work call. We existed in careful parallel, partners in parenting, but nothing more. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me while I nursed Theo, something soft and broken in his expression. Sometimes I'd watch him teaching Theo to crawl, patient and encouraging in a way he'd never been with himself, and feel my heart crack a little more. His mother came for Theo's first birthday. I prepared for battle, but she surprised me. "I was wrong," she said simply, watching Julian help Theo smash cake into his hair. "About you, about what Julian needed. I thought strength meant never needing anyone, but watching him now, you made him human, Cassandra. Even broken apart, you're both better for having loved each other." That night, after everyone left, Julian and I cleaned up together in comfortable silence. Theo slept in his high chair, frosting in his eyebrows. "He's perfect," Julian said softly. "He is. We made him. We did. During the worst time in our marriage, somehow we made the best thing." I stopped wiping the counter, looked at him. Maybe that's what we needed, to break apart completely so we could choose to come back, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. "Do you want to?" His voice was carefully neutral. "I don't know," I admitted. "Some days I watch you with him and remember why I loved you. Other days I remember why we fell apart. Most days I'm just too tired to think about it." He nodded, started loading the dishwasher. "I can wait, however long it takes, even if the answer is never. Being here, being his dad, being your roommate, it's enough." "Is it really?" He paused, hands full of plates. "No, but it's more than I deserve and less than I want, which feels about right for where we are." That night, I heard him singing to Theo through the monitor, some made-up song about dinosaurs and doctors. For the first time since the divorce, I smiled while falling asleep. It was raining the day everything changed, just like it had been raining the day I signed the divorce papers. But this time, I wasn't sitting in my car crying. I was standing at the kitchen window, watching Julian and Theo in the yard. 18 months old now. Theo was splashing in puddles while Julian held his hands, both of them soaked and laughing. Julian's work clothes were ruined, mud splattered up to his knees. The federal job he'd once prioritized over everything had become just a job, something he did between 9 and 5 before racing home for bath time. I didn't think about it. I just walked outside, let the rain soak through my shirt in seconds. "Mama!" Theo squealed, reaching for me. I picked him up, his muddy hands smearing dirt across my face. Julian watched me, rain running down his cheeks like tears. Or maybe they were tears. It was hard to tell. "What changed?" he asked quietly. I thought about all the small moments. Julian sleeping on the bathroom floor when Theo had croup. The way he'd held my hand during Theo's vaccination appointments, knowing I hated needles more than our son did. How he'd learned to braid my hair when I had surgery and couldn't lift my arms. The new job he had turned down because it would mean traveling. "Before, I loved you when you were perfect," I said, shifting Theo to my hip. "All pressed suits and success and 5-year plans. Now," I reached out, touched his mud-stained cheek. "Now I love you at 3 a.m. covered in baby vomit. I love you failing at assembling toys and burning dinner and crying at Theo's first steps. I love you human." "Cassie, I'm not saying we're fixed. We might never be what we were." "I don't want what we were," he said quickly. "What we were broke us. I want what we are now and what we might become." I kissed him then, in the rain with our son between us, tasting rain and tears and possibility. 6 months later, we renewed our vows in the backyard. Small ceremony, just Mila, Julian's mother, a few friends. Theo was our ring bearer, though he mostly just ate the rings before we wrestled them away. "I promise," Julian said, "to fail better this time, to choose us when it's hard, to stay when it's easier to leave, to remember that love isn't about being perfect, it's about being present." "I promise," I said, to trust in our imperfections, to let you see me struggle, to believe that breaking apart was just our way of learning how to rebuild. Theo yelled, "Mama, da," in the middle of our kiss, making everyone laugh. We were a family. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and trying and ours.